Hello, my YouTube family. Our investigation today takes us to the city of Bristol, a place known for its history and culture, but also the backdrop of one of the most shocking crimes in the history of this planet. This is the story of Becky Watts, a teenager whose disappearance and tragic end gripped the entire nation. As we uncover the events step by step, we invite you to be part of this investigation with us. Let us know in the comments which city you are watching from and the time right now. And if you haven't already, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss our deep dives into cases like this. She returned home on February 19, 2015, after spending the night with a friend. Her stepmother, Angie, saw her at around 11:15 in the morning. That was the last anyone saw or heard of Rebecca. She took her phone, her laptop, and her tablet, but no money, makeup, or extra clothes. She didn't say where she was going. It was simply out of character for someone so quiet and reserved. Her disappearance was not noticed immediately. It was not until the following afternoon, February 20, that the family raised the alarm. At around 4 p.m., her father reported her missing. Within hours, police were mobilized and searches began. Local parks, open spaces, and the Troopers Hill Nature Reserve were combed. Volunteers joined officers, driven by a growing fear for her safety. Leading up to that day, Becky had been living a modest, private life. She spent her evenings quietly at home or with close friends. On that morning in February, even the smallest details seemed normal. Until they weren't. There were no signs of forced entry, and nothing appeared disturbed. The quiet house gave no hint of violence or threat. The people close to Becky were in the house that day: her stepbrother, Nathan Matthews, and his girlfriend, Shauna Hoare. They told police they had heard the front door slam and assumed Becky had gone out. That explanation held up briefly, but then suspicions began. Investigators looked at their statements, noting small inconsistencies. By February 22nd, the police issued a public appeal, asking for help. A social media campaign spread across the country. Online posts, shared images, and heartfelt messages carried her face and her name. Helpful tips came from around Britain. Just days later, the search intensified. On February 28th, two people, Nathan and Shauna, were arrested on suspicion of kidnapping. By March 2nd, detectives had rearrested them on murder charges. The case took a major turn when body parts were found inside a shed at a property in Barton Court in Bristol's Barton Hill area. This discovery changed the direction of the entire investigation. But before we go into how these events unfolded, it is important to first understand who Rebecca was, the life she lived, and how this tragic story came to be. If you've made it this far, take a moment to subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Your support helps the algorithm reach more people and ensures that the stories of victims continue to be heard, bringing awareness and justice to lives tragically lost every day. Rebecca Becky Watts was more than a name in the headlines. At 16, she was a shy yet quietly bright girl finding her place in the world. In her early teens, she faced a difficult battle. She was bullied over her weight, which led to anorexia. She dropped to around 6 stone, 38 kilograms, and was briefly home tutored. Those were dark days for her family. But with care, treatment, and unwavering support, she slowly returned, more confident, more herself, and finding again the joy of life. She began to style herself carefully, always looking immaculate. She loved music, films, and shopping for clothes, shoes, sneakers, and makeup. Her bedroom reflected her interests: neatly arranged shoes, a growing makeup collection, posters, and a room that spoke of teenage dreams coming to life. Friends and family described her in gentle but powerful terms: loyal, funny, faultless, caring. She had a quiet wit beneath her reserve, a quality that made her rare and cherished. Becky lived with her father Darren and stepmother Angie. Her stepmother had once worked as a classroom helper, so Becky, scared to be left alone, could remain close to her. Her biological mother, Tanya, lived separately. Family life was complex. Becky was caught between different households, but she became a key bridge. Her mother said Becky had the special gift of keeping her parents friendly after their separation. She was caring in ways some teens aren't. In school, she wasn't the most outgoing, but by the end of primary school, she had begun to emerge. Teachers said her confidence had grown, and she had started to bloom into a beautiful young lady. Still, she remained reserved, cautious, soft-spoken, and private. Secondary school brought renewed strain. Anorexia returned in the shadows of teasing. It was a relapse that shook her family, but again, with help, she fought back. As she healed, she reconnected with life. She rediscovered her love of fashion, tried new hairstyles, and let herself enjoy little joys. Selfies, online shopping, choosing the right jacket, choosing the right song to match her mood. She had friends. One close friend remembered jamming on music, texting late into the night, and planning weekends. Becky had a boyfriend, to whom she texted, "I love you so much." She had college ambitions. She had things ahead, normal teenage things, sleepovers, coursework, dreams. She carried social anxiety under control, gentle, careful, always sincere. Her family saw both her quiet reserve and her growing spark. Her grandmother called her faultless. Her stepmother remembered missing her even through their arguments. Her father said he still listened for her door each night, hoping she'd come in, safe. They waited and hoped, but Becky was lost. This was not a dangerous girl or a troubled soul. She was a normal teen, softly navigating life and beginning to shine. And her disappearance turned that ordinary life into a mystery so stark, it stunned everyone who knew her. Her father realized Becky was missing when she did not return from wherever she had gone. Around 4 p.m. on February 20th, 2015, he began calling her friends to ask if they had seen her. None had. Panic grew as hours passed with no sign of her. That afternoon, the family reported her missing to the police. From that moment, the case was treated as a missing person inquiry. Within hours, Avon and Somerset police were on the scene. Officers searched Becky's home and nearby areas. They used sniffer dogs, horses, divers, and foot patrols across parks, open spaces, and scrubland. Troopers Hill, Fish Ponds, Baddocks Wood, Wharf Road, Trim Valley, and St. George's Park were all scoured. The police helicopter hovered overhead. Investigators examined every detail. Yet the house showed no signs of violence or forced entry. A social media campaign erupted under the hashtag #FindBecky. The message spread fast. Posts, shares, messages, and images featuring her face and name reached millions. Friends and strangers reposted pleas and updates. The campaign reached over 2 million people globally, hitting social platforms and local feeds. The family and police appealed both online and through local networks. Meanwhile, the community in Bristol rallied. Friends, family members, and volunteers organized searches. More than 100 people gathered to comb parks and streets. They handed out leaflets and stuck posters with her photo in windows, on lampposts, and across neighborhoods. Over 6,000 leaflets were printed and distributed. A laptop, mobile phone, and tablet belonging to Becky had gone missing from her home. Days later, a member of the public found a laptop and gave it to the police. Each day without results heightened the tension. Nights passed with no news. The absence of any clue became a growing mystery. Was she hurt, kidnapped, or worse? Her family held on to hope, but braced for the worst with each passing hour. The case grew from a missing child scenario into a puzzle of growing concern. The quiet afternoon when she disappeared turned into a city-wide manhunt. Yet no sign of Becky emerged. On February 28, 9 days after she vanished, the case took a critical turn. 2 people were arrested in connection to her disappearance. Investigators questioned her stepbrother Nathan Matthews and his girlfriend, Shauna Hoare. Detectives focused on their statements, noting they said they heard the door slam and assumed she had left. They claimed not to have seen her, but by now suspicions had risen. Over the next days, police executed focused searches at 3 addresses: Becky's home in St. George, a property in Barton Hill, and one in Southmead. They seized a black Vauxhall Zafira and appealed to the public for information on its movements between February 19th and 23. Together, multiple forces and agencies joined the search, including officers from neighboring counties and national missing persons experts. 2 days later, on March 2nd, investigators re-arrested Nathan and Shauna, now on suspicion of murder. And then came the chilling discovery. On March 3rd, officers searched a shed at an address in Barton Court, just a few streets from a home connected to Nathan. Inside a plastic box and suitcases, they found fragments of a body. The items contained within those containers changed the case forever. The possibility that Becky might be found alive vanished. Shockwaves rippled through her family, the city, and the nation. Investigators quietly closed in on a conclusion nobody wanted to face. The community waited. The question now was not where Becky might be, but what had happened to her. And the answer was hidden only a short distance from everything she had left behind. Police quickly focused on people within Becky's close circle. Nathan Matthews, her stepbrother, and his girlfriend, Shauna Hoare, drew attention early in the investigation. Initial interviews revealed inconsistencies in their accounts. Nathan claimed he had not seen Becky on the day she disappeared, while Shauna's version of events differed in subtle but important ways. Detectives noted that their body language and tone shifted under questioning, prompting deeper scrutiny. Forensic teams were deployed to the home Nathan shared with his mother. They carried out detailed searches using specialist equipment to detect any trace evidence. Investigators also examined nearby properties linked to Nathan and Shauna. The breakthrough came when police discovered several bags hidden in the shed. Inside were human remains, later confirmed to be Becky's. The items were traced back to Nathan, who had transported them after the disappearance. This grim discovery shifted the investigation from a missing person inquiry to a murder case. An autopsy was conducted, and although details were kept away from the public to respect sensitivities, the findings confirmed foul play. Investigators now had to prove who was responsible and how it had happened. Detectives examined Nathan's phone, uncovering incriminating text messages between him and Shauna. The conversations included coded language and unusual references that took on new meaning after Becky's disappearance. They also recovered internet searches from Nathan's devices related to kidnapping and restraining individuals. CCTV footage became another critical piece of evidence. Cameras captured Nathan making trips around the time Becky vanished, including visits to the friend's property where her remains were found. Police used timestamp analysis to align these movements with the estimated time of the crime. The investigation revealed a disturbing level of planning. Nathan had prepared materials and chosen a time when Becky would be alone at home. Evidence suggested he intended to carry out his actions without drawing attention, but his cover stories unraveled under scrutiny. Search warrants allowed police to seize further evidence from Nathan and Shauna's home. Among the items collected were tools, plastic sheeting, and cleaning supplies, all examined for forensic traces. Analysis connected some of these items directly to the crime scene and the concealment of Becky's remains. As the picture became clearer, police formally arrested Nathan and Shauna. Both were charged in connection with the murder, though their levels of involvement became a key point during later proceedings. The emotional impact on Becky's family and the wider community was profound. What began as a hopeful search had ended with confirmation of the worst fears. In Bristol, tributes poured in, and vigils were held in her memory. Detectives described the case as one of the most challenging and heartbreaking investigations they had undertaken, given the victim's young age and the betrayal by someone so close to her. Matthews faced a charge of murder, while Hoare was initially charged with perverting the course of justice, later joined by additional charges as the investigation unfolded. At sentencing, the courtroom was overwhelmed with emotion. The judge, visibly moved, emphasized the sexual motivations behind the plan and described the deceitful way Matthews and Hoare had feigned concern during the family's frantic search. Matthews was given a life sentence, with a minimum of 33 years to be served before parole could be considered. The judge remarked that though a whole life term was not applied, the severity of the crime meant Matthews might never be released. Hoare received a 17-year sentence. Victim impact statements added a powerful emotional layer. Becky's father described the horror of her mutilation and the collapse of everything they held dear. He compared the moment they learned of her fate to being cast off a cliff into the bottomless depth of despair. Her mother spoke of being robbed of her daughter's future and of a family forever fractured. The judge praised the family for their dignity and courage throughout the proceedings. That verdict and sentencing brought formal accountability, but emotional wounds remained raw. The convictions of Nathan Matthews and Shauna Hoare marked the legal end of the case, but for Becky Watt's family and friends, the pain did not fade. While the guilty verdicts brought a measure of justice, they could not fill the void left by her absence. Becky's father spoke publicly about the bittersweet nature of the outcome, relief that the truth had been exposed, but devastation that no sentence could return his daughter. Her loved ones continued to struggle with the haunting reality of her final moments, and the betrayal of having the perpetrators come from within their own family circle. The case sparked widespread public conversation about child safety, particularly in domestic environments where trust is often assumed. Many were shaken by the idea that danger could come from those close to home.
In the spring of 2007, Madeleine McCann was a lively 3-year-old from England. Her bright smile and curious eyes made her unforgettable. She lived with her parents and younger twin siblings in Leicester, a quiet city. Loved by family and friends, Madeleine brought joy to everyone. Her life was simple, filled with playtime and bedtime stories. Yet, her story would soon capture the world's attention. Her parents, Kate and Jerry McCann, were both doctors. They met during medical training in Scotland, where their shared passion for helping others sparked a romance. They fell in love, married, and built a family. Madeleine was their first child, followed by twins 2 years later. Their lives were busy, balancing demanding careers with raising 3 young children. To unwind, they planned a holiday with friends in Portugal. The trip promised sunny days and quality time with their kids. The destination was Praia da Luz, a peaceful coastal village on Portugal's Algarve coast. The Ocean Club, a family-friendly resort, offered cozy apartments and a welcoming vibe. The village was small, with whitewashed buildings, sandy beaches, and calm evenings by the pool. Families dined together, and children played nearby. The McCanns and their friends settled into this relaxed setting, enjoying meals and laughter under the warm May sun. The resort felt safe, a perfect escape from their hectic lives. Each evening followed a routine: dinner, bedtime for the kids, and adults checking on them regularly. The group felt secure in the close-knit resort. But this simple routine, meant to bring rest, was about to shatter. Something unexpected waited in the quiet of that warm Portuguese night, ready to change everything. The McCann family's holiday in Praia da Luz was filled with warmth and laughter. On May 3, 2007, the day felt like any other in their Portuguese escape. The group spent the afternoon by the pool, snapping photos of Madeleine playing with her siblings. Her smile lit up the sunny scene. As evening approached, the adults planned to dine at the Ocean Club's tapas restaurant, just a short walk from their apartments. It seemed like a perfect plan for a carefree night. Around 7 p.m., Kate and Jerry tucked Madeleine and the twins into bed in apartment 5A. Madeleine clutched her favorite pink toy, a soft comfort for sleep. The apartment was quiet, its white walls glowing under the soft light. The parents locked the front door, but left the patio door unlocked for easy checks. They joined their friends at the restaurant, about 50 yards away, close enough to see the apartment. The group agreed to take turns checking on the sleeping children every half hour. The evening felt relaxed, with chatter and wine under the stars. At 8:30 p.m., Jerry checked on the children. All was calm. Madeleine slept soundly, her toy beside her. He returned to the table, reassured. Friends took turns checking other apartments, and the routine held steady. Around 9 p.m., another friend glanced in, seeing nothing unusual. The night carried on, the group unaware of any trouble. But at 10 p.m., Kate went to check. She stepped into the apartment and felt a chill. The bedroom door was slightly ajar, not as they left it. She pushed it open and froze. Madeleine's bed was empty. Her pink toy lay alone on the sheets. The window was open, its shutter raised, letting in the cool night air. Panic set in. Kate rushed back to the restaurant, her voice breaking as she called out. The group scrambled to the apartment, searching every corner. Madeleine was gone. Her siblings slept on, unaware. The parents shouted her name into the dark, running through the resort's pathways. Friends and staff joined, checking pools, gardens, and nearby streets. Flashlights swept over the quiet village, but no sign of the little girl appeared. The once joyful holiday turned into chaos under the moonlit sky. As the search grew frantic, whispers of a strange detail surfaced. A neighbor mentioned seeing an unfamiliar man near the apartments earlier that evening. He carried something, moving quickly into the shadows. Was this a clue to Madeleine's fate? The night held its secrets tightly, leaving everyone grasping for answers in the dark. The night of Madeline's disappearance ended in desperate searches through the dark streets of Praia da Luz. As dawn broke on May 4, 2007, the focus shifted to a formal investigation. Portuguese police, known as the Polícia Judiciária, arrived at the Ocean Club apartment. They began their work, but the scene was already compromised. Friends and staff had entered the room during the initial panic, leaving fingerprints and footprints everywhere. This made it hard to gather clean evidence. Officers took statements from the parents and their group, noting the open window and empty bed. They searched the resort grounds again, using dogs and flashlights, but found no clear trail. Word spread fast. Media from around the world descended on the small village. Reporters set up cameras outside the apartment, broadcasting live updates. The story of a missing British girl on holiday captured global attention. Appeals for information went out, with Madeline's photo shown on every news channel. The family hoped this publicity would bring leads, but it also brought chaos. Crowds gathered, and the quiet resort turned into a media circus. Early leads seemed promising, but quickly faltered. Locals reported odd behaviors around the resort. Some mentioned seeing unfamiliar people watching families at the pool. Police questioned these tips, but they led nowhere. A key sighting came from Jane Tanner, one of the parents' friends. She described a man carrying a child away from the apartment around 9:15 p.m. that night. This became a central clue, with sketches released to the public. Yet, as time passed, doubts arose. Other witnesses gave conflicting accounts of the evening's events. One said the man might have been a father carrying his own child. These mismatches created confusion. The first named person of interest emerged soon after. Robert Murat, a British-Portuguese resident living nearby, drew attention. He had helped translate for police and family in the early hours. But his involvement raised questions. Witnesses claimed to see him near the apartment that night. Police searched his home and seized computers. Murat denied any role, and his alibi held up under checks. By July 2008, he was cleared, but the scrutiny damaged his life. This false lead wasted valuable time. Tips flooded in from across the globe. Sightings of Madeline came from Morocco, where a tourist thought she saw her in a market. Police followed up, but it was another child. In Malta, a report of a girl matching her description led to a chase, only to prove false. Nearby beaches in Portugal were searched after claims of suspicious boats, but nothing surfaced. Each tip brought a surge of hope to the family. Kate and Jerry McCann held press conferences, pleading for information. They traveled to meet the Pope and launch campaigns. The strain showed in their faces as sleepless nights and constant worry took a toll. Their twins needed care, yet the parents pushed on, driven by the need to find their daughter. More subtwists emerged. Conflicting witness statements piled up. One holidaymaker reported a man asking for donations near the resort, acting strangely. Police investigated, but he had no connection. Another lead involved a suspicious car seen leaving the area, but license plate checks revealed nothing. These dead ends frustrated everyone. The investigation stumbled, with police resources stretched thin. As weeks turned to months, doubts began to creep in. Media speculation grew wild. Some questioned the parents' account of the evening checks. Whispers suggested those closest to the case might hold secrets. The Polícia Judiciária shifted focus, interviewing Kate and Jerry more intensely. In September 2007, they were named arguidos, formal suspects. Blood traces in the apartment and rental car were tested, sparking theories. The family denied involvement, insisting on abduction. This turn added layers of intrigue, but leads continued to evaporate. The early months were a maze of hope and disappointment. False sightings and misdirections dominated, while the truth remained hidden. Each dead and deepened the mystery, leaving investigators and the family in limbo. As suspicion turned inward, the case took a darker path. What revelations would come next in this endless search? The early investigation into Madeline McCann's disappearance was riddled with dead ends and false hopes. As leads dried up, frustration mounted for both the police and the family. But in the summer of 2007, a dramatic shift occurred. British specialists brought in trained dogs to re-examine the Ocean Club apartment and other key sites. These animals, skilled in detecting specific scents, uncovered startling clues that turned the case upside down. The dogs, including a cadaver dog and a blood detection dog, alerted in apartment 5A. They reacted strongly in the living room and bedroom, places where Madeline had slept. Similar alerts happened in the McCann's rental car, hired weeks after the disappearance. These findings suggested traces that challenged the abduction theory. Portuguese authorities took note, viewing this as potential evidence of something more complex. The narrative changed overnight. Suspicion now pointed inward, toward those who had been leading the search for answers. This twist forced a re-evaluation of all prior assumptions. What had seemed like a clear case of abduction now carried shadows of doubt. Police revisited statements and timelines, questioning small details once overlooked. The dog's alerts, while not definitive proof, added weight to new theories. Investigators wondered if the open window and empty bed hid a different story. The shift was profound, making everyone question what they thought they knew. The emotional toll was immense. Kate and Jerry McCann faced a whirlwind of public scrutiny. Media headlines turned harsh, accusing them of involvement. Supporters who once rallied behind them began to waver. The family felt betrayed by the very system meant to help. In September 2007, Portuguese police named them arguidos, formal suspects. This status brought intense interrogations and restrictions. They could not leave the country freely, adding to their isolation. Kate described the pain of being separated from her twins during questioning. Jerry spoke of the constant fear that the real culprit was slipping away while focus stayed on them. Confusion reigned. Leaks to the press fueled wild stories, from accidents to cover-ups. The McCanns maintained their innocence, insisting the dog's alerts could be explained by other means. They hired experts to challenge the findings, pointing out limitations in such evidence. Yet, the damage was done. Friendships strained, and the global campaign for Madeline suffered. Donations slowed, and public opinion split. The family endured protests outside their home upon returning to England. This period marked a low point, where hope seemed to vanish amid the storm of accusations. Betrayal felt deep. The parents trusted the investigation, only to become its targets. They pushed back with legal action against misleading reports, but the harm lingered. The case stalled further, with resources divided between old leads and this new direction. Months dragged on, filled with court hearings and media battles. By July 2008, the arguido's status was lifted due to lack of evidence, but the suspicion lingered in many minds. Just as hope faded into despair, a distant breakthrough emerged from an unexpected country. In 2020, German authorities announced a new suspect, linked to crimes in Portugal around the time of Madeline's disappearance. This revelation teased a fresh path to the truth, reigniting the search after years of silence. Could this lead finally uncover what happened that night? A fresh breakthrough emerged years after the initial search waned. In 2020, German prosecutors named Christian B., known fully as Christian Bruckner, as the prime suspect. Evidence placed him in Praia de Luz at the time of Madeline's disappearance, linking his mobile phone to the area in the crucial hours, and identifying his yellow and white Volkswagen camper van nearby. Investigators also noted troubling phone records, a significant call between his number and another from the resort on the night she vanished, which tied him more directly to the timeline. The pattern pointed toward more than opportunity. It hinted at a chilling intent. Bruckner's criminal history revealed a disturbing pattern. A convicted child abuser in Germany and a confirmed rapist of a 72-year-old American tourist in 2005 in the same region, he repeatedly targeted the vulnerable. At least 17 convictions for sexual crimes, burglaries of holiday homes, and drug offenses charted years of exploitation across borders. He lived and traveled intermittently along Portugal's Algarve, often near family resorts and holiday parks, environments where unknowing families sought simple escapes. Investigators uncovered an abandoned factory tied to him in East Germany. Hidden beneath his dog's grave, police found hard drives, USB sticks, and images suggesting a fixation on young children. Email drafts and Skype chats detailed fantasies of abductions involving small, blonde girls, with vivid, grotesque detail. One written scenario described overpowering a mother and child with ether, loading them into a van, and speaking of paradise as he contained his victim. These writings, combined with digital records, painted a portrait of a predator whose desires may have become reality on that fateful night. Together, timeline, location, and motive aligned too precisely to ignore. The suspect's presence, methods, and disturbed mindset formed an inevitable portrait of guilt, while still leaving questions unsolved. No formal charge links him to Madeline's disappearance yet, but the weight of suspicion now rests heavily on Christian Bruckner, a drifter with a predatory history who appeared at the right place and at the wrong time for a crime that forever altered a family's life. And though investigators feel the case stands on its tipping point, unanswered questions continue to haunt those seeking justice. In 2024, Christian B., the prime suspect in Madeleine McCann's disappearance, faced trial in Germany on a string of sexual offenses unrelated to the abduction. The courtroom, shielded by tight security, became the stage for a legal battle under intense media scrutiny. Judges paused proceedings soon after they began, citing concerns of bias, only to resume with replacements, an early sign of a judicial system under strain. Prosecutors described him as a dangerous, psychopathic offender with a disturbing pattern of violence and manipulation. Weeks of testimony followed, but in October 2024 the court acquitted him of all charges, citing weak statements and unreliable witnesses. Despite this setback, he remained imprisoned under a prior sentence for a 2005 rape, with his release date set for September 2025. Prosecutors quickly announced their intention to appeal the acquittal, aiming to reopen proceedings under a new panel of judges. Meanwhile, investigators renewed search efforts in Portugal. In mid-2025, teams used ground-penetrating radar and excavation tools in areas connected to the suspect. They uncovered fragments of clothing and bones, which were sent for forensic testing. Authorities stressed the urgency of their work as the suspect's release drew closer, determined to find conclusive evidence before time ran out. The legal process moved slowly, its pace weighed down by appeals, complex jurisdictional issues, and the challenges of working across international borders. For the McCann family, the wait was agonizing. They continued to speak publicly, refusing to give up on their search for answers. 17 years on, Madeleine's disappearance remains one of the most enduring mysteries of modern times. It has sparked global reflection on child safety, trust, and the limits of justice. The case leaves a haunting, open-ended legacy, a reminder that even with the world watching, some questions may never find answers. In 1988, Deborah Leotrops lived a steady life in Oregon. At 30 years old, she was a dedicated worker and a loving mother. Her days revolved around routine tasks and caring for her young daughter. She lived in a world that seemed calm on the outside but held hidden struggles. Her story began in the quiet suburbs, where peace masked a brewing storm. Deborah worked at Wellens Incorporated, a metal fabrication company in Sherwood. She put in regular shifts, handling tasks with care. Her job gave her stability and purpose. After work, she often rushed home to spend time with her 8-month-old adopted daughter. The child brought joy to her life. Deborah poured her heart into raising her, making sure she felt loved. She planned her days around work and family, finding balance in a busy schedule. Her marriage to Robert Elmer Atrops defined much of her life. The couple had been together for years, but by 1988, things had changed. They separated in June of that year. The split was not easy. They shared custody of their daughter, which meant regular visits to Robert's home in Sherwood. These visits created tension. The couple's relationship had faced serious problems. Friends and family reported physical conflicts between them. Deborah had experienced moments of fear, though she kept details private. These issues weighed heavily on her. Despite the challenges, Deborah found hope in a new relationship. She met someone who treated her with kindness. This new connection lifted her spirits. She shared her excitement with close friends. They noticed her smile more often. But this change stirred trouble. Robert learned about the new man in her life. His reaction was not calm. Arguments grew more frequent. Deborah confided in friends about her worries. She feared Robert's anger might lead to harm. Her concerns hinted at a danger no one could fully predict. The setting of her life was Oregon's suburban towns, Sherwood, Tigard, and Beaverton. These places were peaceful in the late 1980s. Families lived in neat homes with green lawns. Neighbors greeted each other warmly. Community events filled weekends with laughter. The towns felt safe, with tree-lined streets and open parks. Fall brought rain and cool air, setting a quiet mood. But behind this calm, Deborah's personal life was far from steady. Her home was a place of both love and worry. Life in 1988 moved at a slower pace. People listened to cassette tapes and watched evening news. Oregon's suburbs were growing, but they kept a small-town feel. Deborah fit into this world. She worked hard, cared for her daughter, and dreamed of a better future. Her new relationship offered a glimpse of happiness. Yet, the shadow of her past with Robert loomed large. Friends saw her strength, but also her caution. She planned for a divorce, hoping to start fresh. No one expected her routine life to unravel so suddenly. What could turn a normal day into a lasting mystery? The calm of Deborah's life broke on November 29, 1988. Her day started like any other, filled with work and plans. Yet, by night, it turned into a puzzle that would haunt many for years. What began as an ordinary evening ended with questions no one could answer. She left her job at Wellens Incorporated in Sherwood around 5 p.m. Her shift had been typical, handling tasks at the metal fabrication company. With the workday done, she drove to Tigard for a scheduled hair appointment. She arrived at Razmataz Salon, located in a busy shopping area, right on time at 5:15 p.m. There, she spent nearly 2 hours getting her hair styled. She chatted with the stylist, then left around 7 p.m. Her next stop was clear. She planned to pick up her 8-month-old daughter from her estranged husband's home in Sherwood. The drive was short, about 20 minutes, and she aimed to arrive between 7:30 p.m. and 8 p.m. Earlier that day, Robert Atrops, her estranged husband, had picked up their daughter from the babysitter. He took the child to his Sherwood home as part of their custody routine. This was not unusual. The babysitter noted nothing out of the ordinary when he arrived around 5 p.m. He seemed calm, ready to care for the baby. But the evening took a strange turn. According to Robert, Deborah never reached his house. He waited, expecting her between 7:30 p.m. and 8 p.m., but she did not appear. Around 9:30 p.m., he began calling friends and family, asking if they had seen her. His voice carried worry, or so he claimed. He also said he called 911 to report her missing, but later checks found no record of this call from his home phone. This gap in his story raised early doubts. The next morning, November 30th, Robert went to the Washington County Sheriff's Office. He filed a missing person report, providing details about Deborah's car, a 1988 black Honda Accord, and her last known plans. The police took note and began their search, unsure of what they would find. On December 1st, a chilling discovery changed everything. Deborah's car was found abandoned on a quiet, dead-end road in Beaverton. The keys sat on the driver's seat, but the license plates were missing. The car appeared untouched otherwise, with no signs of a struggle. Officers opened the trunk and found Deborah inside. The sight was a shock, turning a missing person case into something far darker. An autopsy the next day, December 2nd, confirmed the worst. Deborah had been attacked and strangled, leading to her death. The medical examiner ruled it a homicide, marking a grim end to her journey that night. What happened in those missing hours? She left the salon at 7 p.m., headed for Sherwood, but never arrived. Where did her path lead instead? The abandoned car, the missing plates, and the unanswered calls left a trail of questions. The evening that started with routine plans now held a mystery that demanded answers. The discovery of Deborah's body turned a missing person case into a murder investigation. The Washington County Sheriff's Office moved fast. They knew time was critical to find answers. Suspicion fell quickly on Robert Atrops, the estranged husband. Their troubled marriage made him the first person to question. But as detectives dug deeper, the path to truth grew murky. Sheriff's deputies began with interviews. Robert was questioned within hours of the missing person report on November 30th, 1988. He told a simple story. He stayed home with their daughter all evening on November 29th, waiting for Deborah to arrive. She never showed up, he said. He claimed he called friends, family, and even 911 around 9:30 p.m. But the lack of a 911 call record from his home phone puzzled investigators. No neighbors or visitors could confirm his presence at home during those key hours. His alibi stood alone, unsupported, raising early doubts. Investigators looked at other possibilities. Deborah's new partner, a man she had recently started seeing, was an obvious lead, but he had a solid alibi. He was at work that evening, with co-workers verifying his whereabouts. Police checked his schedule and found no gaps. Other friends and family were also questioned. None showed any reason to harm her. Each lead pointed back to the personal conflicts in her marriage. Evidence collection was thorough. The Beaverton site where the black Honda Accord was found became a focal point. Deputies gathered soil samples from the car's tires, hoping to trace its path. Fibers from the interior and trunk were collected for analysis. The scene itself offered few clues, a quiet, dead-end road with no witnesses. The missing license plates suggested someone wanted to delay identification. Every item was cataloged, but answers remained out of reach. Witnesses provided critical insight. Friends and co-workers shared stories of Deborah's strained relationship with Robert. They described arguments and moments of tension. Some recalled her saying she feared what he might do. These accounts painted a picture of a marriage marked by conflict. Yet, without direct evidence tying Robert to the crime, the case rested on suspicion alone. The investigation pressed forward for months. Detectives followed every tip, no matter how small. They canvassed neighborhoods in Beaverton and Sherwood, asking for sightings of the car or unusual activity. Phone records were checked, confirming Robert's calls to friends, but not to 911. The evidence pointed strongly to him, but it was all circumstantial. No witness saw him with Deborah that night. No physical proof linked him directly to the car or the crime. As 1989 unfolded, the case grew harder to crack. The strong leads toward Robert lacked the solid connection needed for an arrest. Deputies felt they were chasing shadows, always close, but never close enough. The community watched, hoping for justice, but the trail was fading. What barriers would keep this case unsolved for so long? The answers seemed just out of reach, waiting for a future that could unlock them. The investigation into Deborah's murder pushed forward with urgency, but answers remained elusive. Deputies chased every possible lead, hoping to find the key to justice. Yet, as months passed, each path seemed to fade, leaving only frustration and unanswered questions. Early on, investigators explored other possibilities. Could someone else have been involved? They looked at acquaintances and considered random acts, like a robbery gone wrong. Deborah's new partner had already been cleared, but police checked other co-workers and friends. Each person had a verifiable alibi or no motive. The idea of a stranger committing the crime was tested too. The Beaverton Road where the car was found was quiet, but no witnesses reported suspicious activity. These angles quickly fell apart, pointing back to the strained marriage. Robert's story drew close scrutiny. His claim of staying home with their daughter sounded straightforward, but holes appeared. The unrecorded 911 call he said he made around 9:30 p.m. stood out. Phone records showed calls to friends and family, but none to emergency services. This gap made deputies question his honesty. His timeline of the evening was vague, with no one to confirm his whereabouts during the critical hours. Despite these red flags, there was no hard evidence to tie him directly to the crime. Suspicion grew, but proof stayed out of reach. Efforts to uncover the truth were extensive. Deputies searched the Beaverton site again, looking for overlooked clues. They combed Sherwood neighborhoods, asking residents about unusual cars or people that night. Phone records were rechecked, and tips from the public were followed. Every lead ended in disappointment. The soil from the car's tires and fibers from the trunk offered no clear answers with the tools available. The missing license plates hinted at planning, but no fingerprints or witnesses connected to them. The technology of 1988 was a major hurdle. Forensic science was limited. DNA testing was in its early stages, unable to analyze small samples like those on Deborah's clothing. Soil comparisons lacked precision, making it impossible to link the car to a specific location. These limits blocked the kind of matches that could have solved the case quickly. Detectives relied on traditional methods, but they weren't enough. By 1990, the investigation slowed to a halt. The case went cold. The evidence was strong enough to raise suspicion, but not to support charges. Deputies filed away the records, though some reviewed them over the years. Occasional tips came in, but none led to breakthroughs. The community's hope for answers dimmed. Deborah's family waited, holding on to memories of her life. The trails had faded, leaving a heavy silence. Could the mystery stay buried forever? With each passing year, it seemed the truth might never surface. Yet, somewhere in the evidence, answers waited for the right moment to emerge. In 2020, more than 3 decades after Deborah Atrop's murder, hope for answers returned. The Washington County District Attorney's Office formed a dedicated cold case unit, funded by a grant aimed at re-examining unsolved homicides, with a strong focus on cases where DNA evidence might still be viable. This new unit brought together experienced prosecutors and forensic experts, determined to breathe life into long-dormant files. Deborah's case, unsolved since 1988, quickly earned a place on their review list. The potential for modern forensic tools to uncover fresh leads made it an ideal candidate for a renewed investigation. By 2021, the Cold Case Unit partnered with the Washington County Sheriff's Office to conduct a detailed review of the Atrop's case. This collaboration brought in seasoned investigators and forensic specialists who had not been part of the original inquiry, allowing them to approach the evidence with fresh eyes and no preconceptions. Their task was clear: revisit every statement, re-examine every piece of evidence, and apply modern science where 1980s technology had fallen short. One of the first steps was to revisit the human side of the case, people who knew Deborah, Robert, and the circumstances of that November night. Investigators reached out to past witnesses, friends, and family members. Many had not been formally interviewed in decades. These conversations reaffirmed what the original files suggested. The relationship between Deborah and Robert had been deeply strained. Witnesses recalled specific arguments, Deborah's visible fear, and her private concerns about Robert's temper. Some remembered her expressing a sense of foreboding in the weeks before her death. While much of this was already known, redocumenting it under today's investigative standards strengthened the narrative and gave prosecutors a clearer picture of the dynamics leading up to her disappearance. Detective Kevin Winfield took a central role in this renewed effort. A veteran investigator with a reputation for thoroughness, Winfield immersed himself in the old case files, thousands of pages of reports, interviews, and evidence logs. He methodically pieced together a timeline of events, looking for inconsistencies that might have been overlooked in the original investigation. This deep dive revealed subtle but significant details, discrepancies in Robert's statements over the years, small changes in how he described his actions on the night of November 29, 1988, and variations in his accounts of when and how he tried to reach Deborah that evening. These inconsistencies, once minor, now stood out as potentially important. The most significant breakthroughs came from applying modern forensic technology to preserved evidence. Among the items kept in storage was Deborah's coat, worn the night she vanished. In the late 1980s, DNA testing was in its infancy, and any samples too small or degraded were essentially unusable. Now, advanced DNA analysis could detect and profile microscopic traces. Testing revealed genetic material on Deborah's coat that matched Robert Atrop's. While finding a spouse's DNA on clothing wasn't unusual in a domestic setting, the context here was different. She and Robert had been separated for months, and she had not been living with him. The presence of his DNA on her outerwear the night she was last seen raised pressing questions. Another major step forward came from an unlikely source: soil analysis. The FBI conducted a detailed comparison of mud found on Deborah's vehicle with samples collected from land owned by Robert. Modern techniques could match soil composition at a microscopic level, accounting for mineral content, organic matter, and other unique signatures. The analysis concluded that the mud on her car's undercarriage was consistent with the soil from Robert's property. This connection placed her vehicle, at some point, on or near his land after she left the salon that evening. In 2022, detectives sat down with Robert for a formal interview, part of the renewed investigation. Over the decades, he had maintained his innocence and largely stuck to his original story. But under careful questioning, subtle shifts emerged. Details he once gave with certainty were now vague or altered. His recollection of times, phone calls, and even the sequence of events no longer matched his 1988 statements. Investigators noted these changes as potential indicators that his account had been less than truthful from the start. For those working the case, these developments were more than just pieces of evidence. They were a sign that time had not erased the truth, only delayed its arrival. Modern forensic science had opened doors that were sealed shut in the 1980s. DNA results, soil matches, and evolving witness recollections combined to strengthen the case in ways that would have been impossible 3 decades earlier. The atmosphere around the investigation shifted. What had long been a cold trail was now active and warm with possibility. The technology, persistence, and renewed focus of the cold case unit offered a tangible path toward justice. After years of silence, the story of Deborah Atrops was being told again, this time with tools and determination that could finally bring the answers her family had waited for. By 2023, the decades-old mystery surrounding Deborah Atrops' death finally reached a turning point. The Washington County District Attorney's Office, working closely with the Sheriff's Office and the Cold Case Unit, had compiled a body of evidence that was stronger than ever. This included the newly processed DNA from Deborah's coat linking to Robert Atrops, the FBI soil analysis tying her car to his property, and the pattern of conflicting statements he had given over the years. Prosecutors believed the case, once considered too circumstantial, now had the forensic weight to stand in court. In early 2023, this evidence was presented to a grand jury. Jurors reviewed the history of the case, from Deborah's final night in November 1988 to the technological breakthroughs more than 3 decades later. They heard how her car had been found abandoned with its plates removed, how her body was discovered in the trunk, and how the original investigation had stalled for lack of direct proof. The new forensic results provided that missing link. After considering the testimony and exhibits, the grand jury returned an indictment for second-degree murder against Robert Atrops. On March 2, 2023, law enforcement officers located Robert in Newberg, Oregon. Now in his late 60s, he was arrested without incident. For many in the community, the news came as both a shock and a relief. The man long suspected in whispers was now formally charged. The arrest marked a decisive moment in a case that had haunted investigators and Deborah's family for 37 years. Prosecutors outlined a clear motive. At the time of Deborah's death, she was building a new life, one that no longer included Robert. She had started a new romantic relationship, which, according to friends, made her happier than she had been in years. A divorce was on the horizon, and custody of their infant daughter would be part of the proceedings. Witnesses recalled that Robert had shown jealousy over the new man in Deborah's life and had a history of tense and sometimes volatile interactions with her. The prosecution's theory was that Robert's resentment, fear of losing control, and anger over her moving on reached a breaking point that night in late November 1988. The case moved toward trial in April 2025, more than 2 years after Robert's arrest. The 3-week proceedings drew significant attention, both for the rarity of a cold case being solved after so long and for the legal challenges involved. Time had eroded some aspects of the case. Many witnesses' memories had faded, and some individuals from the original investigation were no longer alive. However, the prosecution kept its focus on the most solid, enduring evidence: the DNA on Deborah's coat and the FBI soil match linking her car to Robert's property. Jurors were presented with the contrast between the original investigation's limitations and today's forensic capabilities. They saw charts and heard expert testimony explaining how modern DNA analysis could detect and confirm a match from microscopic samples that would have been unusable in the 1980s. They listened to soil experts explain the unique composition that tied the mud from Deborah's vehicle directly to Robert's land. These scientific anchors, combined with Robert's shifting statements over the years, formed the core of the state's case. On April 17, 2025, after just 2 hours of deliberation, the jury returned with a unanimous verdict: guilty of second-degree murder. The speed of the decision underscored the strength of the evidence and the persuasiveness of the prosecution's narrative. For Deborah's family, the moment was bittersweet. Justice had finally been served, but it had taken nearly 4 decades to arrive. On July 8, 2025, Robert was sentenced to life in prison, with the possibility of parole after 25 years. At his age, the sentence all but ensured he would spend the rest of his life behind bars. His defense team immediately filed a notice of appeal, signaling that the legal process was not entirely over. Still, the conviction marked the end of a long fight for justice. The resolution of the Deborah Atropos case stands as a powerful example of how persistence, combined with advances in forensic science, can overcome the passage of time. Investigators who refuse to give up, prosecutors who believe the case could be proven, and scientists who applied modern techniques to decades-old evidence all played a role in breaking the silence of 37 years. What began as a mystery in the suburbs of Oregon in 1988 finally reached its conclusion in a courtroom in 2025, a testament to the fact that, sometimes, time is not an enemy of justice, but an ally when paired with determination and progress. For Deborah Atropos' family, the decades between her death and Robert's conviction were marked by an unshakable commitment to finding the truth. Year after year, they kept her memory alive, refusing to let the case fade into obscurity. At court hearings, family members spoke of the pain of living without answers for so long, and of the determination that carried them through. Their words reminded the court and the public that behind every cold case file is a life cut short and loved ones left waiting for justice. Media coverage played a central role in sustaining awareness. Over the years, local news stations, newspapers, and later online platforms revisited Deborah's story, often around anniversaries of her death. These reports kept her name in the public conversation and sometimes prompted new tips to law enforcement. Authorities themselves issued repeated appeals for information, encouraging anyone with knowledge to come forward, even decades later. When modern forensic breakthroughs emerged, the story once again drew attention, sparking renewed interest. Technology not only advanced the investigation, but also gave the public hope that the case could finally be solved. At Robert's sentencing, Deborah's daughter, who had been an infant when her mother died, spoke directly to him, expressing the loss she had carried her entire life. Her words brought a deeply personal dimension to the moment, showing the human cost of the crime. In the end, it was this combined force of family persistence, public awareness, investigative dedication, and technological progress that drove the case to its resolution. The memory of Deborah Atropos endured because people refused to forget her, and that refusal became the foundation for justice. The resolution of the Deborah Atropos case is more than the end of a decades-old investigation. It is a testament to how science, perseverance, and dedication can illuminate even the darkest corners of history. Forensic technology, once limited in scope, has evolved into a powerful tool capable of unlocking evidence thought unusable. In Deborah's case, DNA testing and advanced soil analysis provided the key connections that transformed a file of unanswered questions into a prosecutable case. Without these advancements, the truth may have remained hidden. Time is often seen as an obstacle in the pursuit of justice. Memories fade, witnesses pass away, and physical evidence can degrade. Yet, this case proves that time can also work in favor of truth-seeking. As technology improves, the ability to extract answers from old evidence grows stronger. Every passing year brings new opportunities to revisit unresolved cases, and with them, the potential to give closure to families who have waited far too long.